These are categories of the phishing attacks. So let's take a look at some of them. The first and the simplest form of the phishing attack, although we discussed this in the beginning, is something called as a clone phishing. So what is clone phishing is you create a clone of a legitimate entity. It might be a legitimately looking website, an illegitimate website looking exactly same as that of the legitimate website, or you copy the email sent by an legitimate organization earlier, and then you use the exact same content, but here and there the URL is misspelled and then inserted into that email and sent. So you actually clone the legitimate communication and then you send it. This is the simplest form of the phishing attack that one can have. The second form of the phishing attack is something called as the spear phishing. What happens here is one thing can be you send the email to possibly to every user, but here in this spear phishing that is not happening. So you target a specific set of the people, maybe a senior management in the organization. So maybe let's say if the CEO or the CTO of the company is sent an email with saying that we have found that you are infringing on our copyrighted material or something like that. If you don't do this, then we actually might you might face a legal action or something like that. And then these are the people, top management people are the in charge of the entire company. If they get worried and then some illegitimate action they take by overlooking the, and then they end up revealing something to the attackers. So you understand a particular category of the people, and then only to that category of the people you send the information where the reaction might be of a particular type. So that kind of phishing attack is called as a spear phishing. So is a sending email to all the faculty members of the institution. There is a meeting at this and so time. This is an online meeting. You click on this link to join, something like this, or you indicate whether you want to join or not by giving these details. You send one form and then the user click on that, and they might end up giving the some details. So that's the called spear phishing. This is one other form of this phishing type. And the third and the most common form of the phishing attack, particularly with the financial institutions and banking institutions, is called phone phishing. So the survey that we referred in the beginning was kind of the phone phishing. You call up somebody, some user of a particular bank, and then say that your account, we noticed that something fraudulent has happened in your account. Then the user gets scared. In order to secure your account, you may need to do reset your password. Tell me your existing username and password, then the user yes. So this is a very common form of the phishing attack called as the phone phishing. So as I said, in most of the cases nowadays, if that is not the phone phishing, then you send a large set of the emails to potential victims. So how do we actually send that? So the email should look like the legitimate one. So let's say I am sending an email with the customer care of the State Bank of India. So the URL from it should appear that the email has indeed come from the customer care unit of the State Bank of India. Then how do I do that? So to do that, normally email spoofing is used. The appearance wise, it might look like the email ID prom address. If you see just at the outset, it might look customer care at the rate of sba.com, which is might be a legitimate email address, but internally it is actually coming from some other source. So these are called spoofed emails. So there are a lot of such spoofed emails, email senders available even online also. So unless you actually go and look into the details of the entire email header, so there is, when you receive an email, there is something called header that comes along with that email. So that header has got the details, who is exactly the sender, and via which route, which mail server it has come, probably the IP address involved in the communication, and all those details are actually what is the message ID and stuff like that are there in that header. So normally when you open that email, that full header is actually hidden. Only that prom and two entities are shown on the any email box. So if I don't look at the entire header, I will actually not get to know that this is actually spoofed email. So such spoofed emails are commonly used. So first of all, it is looking like legitimate one, particularly as I said in the clone phishing attack, you actually send the legitimate communication, even content wise it is looking same, and even the email prom address is looking same. Then the user has less to suspect this is an illegitimate communication. So such spoofed email campaigns are used in this phishing attack. So here is a sample email. This is a spoofed email. What is exactly saying is is actually mimicking a bank communication, and it is actually, we have noticed some fraudulent activity has happened against the bank accounts, and then they warn the user that some of the user data might be lost if you don't do or follow these instructions. There is an URL that is given as part of this email. That email link, URL link, is actually an illegitimate link. It is redirecting to a fraudulent website. So what might have happened is some of the characters might have been changed, something like that. So the yeah, bank email website URL, mostly it is looking like a legitimate URL, but here and there some characters might have been changed. So and at the end it is also saying that, if you see interestingly, please do not answer this message, and but only follow above mentioned instructions. So this is something very interesting. So you don't reply to this email, but only do what the email is actually saying. Basically, click on that link that is given. So any unsuspecting user who actually click on that will end up revealing the sensitive information. So, as I said, misspelling and sending the spoofed email, sending the clone communication, or having the clone website is one form of the activity. But today, such phishing attacks are at a very sophisticated level. So they do use some kind of the bots to perform some large scale activities. So, for example, if I want to send the such spam emails or illegitimate emails to involving the illegitimate website or URLs embedded inside the email to a large section of the people, maybe 10 million users. So how individually I cannot keep sending one after the other email to 10 million people. But what I do is I write an automated software called bot, and then I supply what are the user IDs to which this email to be sent, and that bot actually keeps sending emails one after the other to all the users. So that entire setup is automated. So such softwares are used in today's email campaigns. And at the very sophisticated level, today the phishing kits are readily available in the dark market. So let's say if I am the illegitimate user, I want to do phishing attack, what I can do is go there and pay some money, and that kit has got everything. So might be having the websites of legitimately looking website, or the clone website of different banking website and financial institutions, or anything that you demand, they might create one and then give it to you. So such you don't have to do anything. Even the bot program which you need to send the emails is also already there. the credential collector programs are also there, the encashers are also there. You just need to know how to use that kit, ready-made kit, pay money, get that kit, and then you start using that for your advantage. Such is the level of sophistication that today's phishing attacks actually are at that level. So some of the techniques also use URL, different URL encoding methods. So for example, what you see in this screen is here is a URL www.example.com. So what I do is I take this URL and then encode it in the hexadecimal format, dollar percentage 68, percentage 74, entire thing. So if such URLs are given as part of any website or as part of the an email communication, there is little that one get to know whether this is legitimate or illegitimate. So by converting this into URL into some such encoding techniques, you actually hide the identity of the original URL. So anybody who again clicks on that will become the victim of such malicious campaigns. So sometimes you even show the fake banners. So here is one banner. So it's actually looking that it's claiming to be a banking website. You click on this one to find out more, and whether it is actually really doing what it is claiming or not. Only when you click on that you will actually get to know what is beneath that. So such banners are also shown as part of the phishing attacks. So at the very extreme level, so phishing attacks today are so at a sophisticated level. So they use something called as the dynamic code, meaning so I might have a URL embedded as part of the email communication, but that email contains the site that is visited by clicking that email. The content of that website keep changing. So today it might be looking legitimate, and tomorrow morning when I click on that one, so then something a malicious software might be put on that website. So our legitimate software is replaced with the illegitimate version. So first you gain the confidence and then you actually replace that. So then there is not much that the end user can do. If a website itself is actually initially it has gained your confidence by giving some legitimate service, by giving some legitimate free software or something like that, but subsequently it has actually changed its course of action. So if that happens, then even the users who are aware of the consequences can also become or fall prey to such attacks. On the other hand, the instead of URL, the names like examples.com, the URLs themselves might be having the numbers. So these IP address themselves might be shown as part of the URL. Then again, we don't know what is the IP address of the google.com, what is the IP address of the xyzbank.com. So any communication which is actually looking legitimate or is coming from the bank indeed. So if that such URLs are encoded as part of that email, then the user might end up clicking on them and visiting the illegitimate websites. So at the other extreme, you might have very targeted email sent, so giving the personal details of the end users, or meaning instead of saying dear user, you might say that so and so particular user. You give some context to the communication, and then you send a very personalized looking email. So by looking at that email and communication, you might feel that it's actually sent to only you, target sent to particularly to you. So and then you might end up clicking on that URLs and revealing the credentials to the attackers. So these are different forms on the means of the social engineering and particularly the phishing attack types. So the point I wanted to make is today we are at a very sophisticated level of the attack. So if that is the level, then how do we actually take care of ourselves? What we can do to protect ourselves? Don't fall prey to such attack campaigns. So at the least level, what you can do is you can have some email protection mechanisms. So don't or like open the suspicious email attachments, and unless you are sure about the URLs, never click on the URLs given in any email communications. And by disabling the HTML capability, sometimes when you open the emails, the HTML page itself is displayed inside as part of the email. So such pages might have embedded the URLs inside that. When you click on that, then it will redirect you to illegitimate website. So if you disable the HTML capability, then such a HTML message will not be shown. So that is the thing, one thing you can employ. Of course, the creating enough awareness and educating the users will also help. So particularly if someone calls, particularly banks and all, keep on telling that we never ask for such credentials, PIN numbers, and other things. So these are all part of the awareness and education creation campaign, and that will help. That will at least minimize the number of the people who actually fall prey to such attacks. And nowadays, there are web browser plugins that are available, toolbars that are available, which actually verify the URLs with a backend database. They do have a database of the websites or the URLs which are actually known to spread the malware, or which are the sources of the phishing attacks. The moment you open such URLs, you might see such notifications shown on the on your browser screen. This is web forgery. This page is very likely to have been designed to trick the user to gain some, collect some credential details and all that. How does this happen? So this, the moment URL, whatever you type on this screen, it is taken and then against the backend database is actually verified. You constantly keep updating the database as and when new phishing websites are discovered, new URLs are discovered. You keep pushing that, updating that database, and then the moment user, whoever is installed such plugins, before actually making the contact with that illegitimate website, the URL is also verified against that database. So if user is one, then probably he may not or she may not enter their credential details on such websites. So you have such database of fully qualified domain names and their corresponding IP address mappings, and then you keep dynamically as and when user enters the visits the website, such enters the URLs, then you verify that. And the other thing that you can do is enable multi-factor authentication. So instead of nowadays the all banks and all require you to enter the OTP and other thing, along with your username and passwords, you also need to enter those the OTP that comes to your mobile phone. So this is called multi-factor authentication. So more than one factor is used to authenticate the users. So although by any chance if I lose my banking credentials, username and password, since the OTP comes to my mobile phone only, so any if I lose that credential, then the adversary, the attacker may not be able to do fraudulent transactions using the credentials with my bank account. So such multi-factor authentication will also help. These are all things that the at the personal level one can take as an end user the protection. So on the other hand, the enterprises also doing something to help or protect against such malicious phishing and social engineering attacks. What they can usually do is collect the data from the users. So the data can be anything, the kind of the sites that the links the user clicks, the kind of the emails that the user receives, and it might be the email service provider themselves like the Google and all. They analyze the emails that are sent to a large section of the people and understand what is common between them. So as a part of that, if it is a spam email or illegitimate email, so they might have keywords like click on the link below, just like the example that I saw in the previous spam email case. It was telling that don't reply to this email, but click on this or do whatever is said in that email, basically clicking that URL. So it might click on that your account would be deleted. It might also contain the words like the username and passwords need to be reset by following this link or something like that. So when such emails are sent to a large section of the user accounts, then that will give an indication that these are actually spam emails sent to basically to lure the people to give out the credentials. So, as a bulk scale, organization can analyze such communications at a very large scale and identify that such a so and so email campaigns or fraudulent email campaigns are going on. So, at the other end, the enterprises can enforce communication to be legitimate by giving some context. So, what we spoke last time, maybe the next time when we send an email, I need to derive some context to the previous email. Instead of saying, dear doctor, maybe they might want to write my name in the email and then start the conversation. Although this is not nowadays, the both softwares are available even to do this. I supply along with the email, if I supply the username also, whatever name that I want to write, so they can replace the dear, instead of writing dear user, dear particular whatever name that you want, the names are there. But nevertheless, by enforcing such context information, I can at least raise the bar little bit against such attacks. So such personalized emails with the context to the previous conversation that we had will actually also help. So such things the enterprises can take as a precautionary measure. So as I said, financial institutions and banks are the biggest losers of such phishing attacks because they lose crores of money every year to such malicious campaigns. So they are also doing their part to both creating the awareness and also protecting the their communication and the their business websites and other things. So what they do is they hire professional security agents to scrutinize the website for any loopholes and also regularly keep sending the alerts to the users. They say that you don't click on the any URL given as part of the email. Our customer care units never ask for the credentials or the PIN numbers, don't reveal anything, including the banking officials and so forth. So, such they actually also legitimately every now and then they communicate with the end user so that the risk can be minimized. So these are all in nutshell. Social engineering is a type of the attack which actually play with the human mind and then with an interaction with the end users. The end user is tricked to do something an illegitimate action, and by virtue of that, they might harvest your username credentials and other sensitive information, and subsequently such information can be utilized to do illegitimate transactions against your using your identity from your bank account and other things. And you have got some protection means both at the personal level, being the alert and observing the things at the best thing that one can do. And on the other hand, the financial institutions like the banks and the large scale enterprises will also have their own setup mechanism to protect the end users. So that's all I have for today's lecture. Thank you.